of Silver Goose Farm Stories. I'm your host, Mama Goose, aka Maria Sola. It's been so long since I last uploaded a podcast, so my sincere apologies for the inconsistency. It was sort of a whirlwind of 4 weeks. We had Holy Week and then Pascha and Bright Week and then the monastery feast day. And so for anyone who's Orthodox, you would know that that's a lot of time and energy spent doing everything else around the church services and not necessarily being available on the farm, let alone doing a podcast. But after all of that activity, then we had our first ever quote-unquote vacation since moving to the farm. The family and I took a very long road trip up to Oregon for my brother-in-law's wedding. It was lovely to be at the wedding, and our visit included a lot of family reunion because everyone flew in from all over the country to see the wedding. And also we took a trip afterwards to the Washington Monastery in Goldendale, close by. And even the time spent in the car was really wonderful. We drove through some of the most gorgeous forests of the Pacific Northwest, and the hours of chatting with my husband is always something I enjoy because he can't escape me when he's stuck in the driver's seat. Even the kids weren't that awful in the car. A few squabbles were expected because it was literally hours and hours of driving, and even the magic school bus can't distract him for that long, but for the most part, they were very pleasant, and it was a really great experience for everybody. I think prepping for any family vacation can be a logistical nightmare, trying to figure out what to pack, how to pack it, the luggage, the clothes, and then we also had garment bags because we had suits and flower girl dresses and the road snacks, the road entertainment, and everything else that you'd need in order to prep for a wedding on top of all that. And then we had the additional step of prepping for the homestead while we were gone. And so I kind of want to talk to you about what that was like. Like, how do you prepare a homestead for your absence? When I thought about homesteading and at the beginning of this farming journey, and we're still at the beginning of the farming journey, but in the very, very baby steps of it all, I had that lingering fear that once we started homesteading, we'd be locked tight and basically chained to our farm. I always talk about homesteading and the responsibilities that you take on as a farmer, because it's all part of that stewardship of nurturing the land, taking care of the animals on it, and all that entails. It's a responsibility that you kind of have to take seriously and prioritize over all the other things in your life. I was worried that we'd be tied to a milking schedule, babysitting a garden, having to be constantly present for all of those projects. And what I discovered along the way instead was that I wasn't tied down. In actuality, I never really wanted to leave. That was a surprise for me because, in my late teens and 20s, my biggest desire and life goal was to fill up all the pages of my passport. Like, if I could travel the world living out of my backpack, that was all that I ever wanted to do. And now I never really want to leave the 30 acres of our farm. I occasionally go down into the city to do grocery shopping and run errands, but always I'm just so much more happy when I'm driving back up the hill and making those familiar turns before pulling into our long gravel driveway. My husband's vacation days for work are spent doing project weeks, and where we try and knock off as many important to do things as possible. And our weekends are pre-planned for months as we kind of enumerate our biggest tasks and schedule them in advance and figure out like what is the best way to get everything done. And that wasn't like a chore for us. It is one of the many enjoyable conversations that my husband and I have together. What are we going to do this weekend? What are our priorities? And what should we save for next time, etc. I think that kind of makes us boring people. But it's really something that we enjoy talking about because this is how we are investing our time, our money, and our energy, not just in the physical structure of the farm and the inhabitants of it, but also in the process building up the life that we are creating here the best that we can. But then there's the wedding, and it was special, and we were very excited about it because, as my husband says, it was his baby brother getting married. And if you're listening, Jamie and Sarah, yep, that's co-host Jamie. Congratulations to the newlyweds. We are so happy for you and wish you all the best in your life going forward. But before we went off on our travels, we had to make sure everything was ready for our friend who was going to be the farm caretaker while we were away, and doing everything we could to make sure that they weren't confronted with any farm emergencies while we were many, many miles and a state over. I believe Murphy's Law says that anything bad that can happen will happen, and probably the best time for those things to happen is when you're not around to fix them. While most of the time my husband and I are pretty laid back about the farm emergencies, if an animal gets out, we aren't too concerned because they're real familiar with the farm and us and are happy to just mosey around until we shoo them back into their pen. And I don't mind hand watering a few of the garden beds or the fruit trees if the drip system stops working or if there's some sort of leak that was not fixed. But it isn't fair to expect that from anyone else who, hadn't volunteered for the way we live our life. So the weeks leading up to the wedding, we spent a lot of time securing animal gates, testing and mending watering lines, locking down the pens, and stocking up on animal feed, just so that the list of farm responsibilities was as minimal as possible for our friend who was going to be there taking care of everything. We also let our close by friends know the dates of our travels and made sure that they were aware that they might be contacted if there was any sort of unforeseeable farm emergency that happened and we were unreachable. I had a bit of anxiety about the possibility that our milk cow would calve while we were gone, because it is getting kind of close to that time, or that the gilt in our pig pen would farrow. But there wasn't much that we could do about that, Plus, Lavelle's pin ligaments didn't look that loose, and her udder hadn't filled out. So I was pretty confident that we'd have a few weeks at minimum until she had her baby. And as for the gilt, the pigs are supposed to farrow and take care of their babies without any human intervention anyway. So if she did farrow, this was going to be like a test for her viability of staying on the farm. Surprisingly, I felt unworried about the farm itself while we were gone. It was great to have someone available that we could trust with the responsibilities. And it also probably helped that the wedding trip was a flurry of activity and, responsibilities that would keep anyone thoroughly distracted and busy, whether or not they had a farm back home to worry about. As much as I enjoyed the change in scenery and the time with my husband and kids and seeing all of our aunts and uncles and nieces and nephews and cousins, and even just spending the time with my parents and my in-laws who I see regularly anyway, but just it was nice to spend more time with them in a different setting. It was wonderful to be back home. The animals looked happy to see us, and everyone was thankfully in their pens and looking healthy and well fed. Lavelle did not calve while we were gone, but the gilt did. She had 6 living piglets when we came back. 2 had a new phenotype to our farm. They're orange with white stripes. And fun fact, her sister, who is at a friend's farm, also had piglets right around the same time she did. And they have a completely different look. They're orange with spots. It was kind of funny to see the 2 sisters having such different looking litters. But yeah, she did wonderfully. The piglets look happy and healthy. And we're just kind of letting her be comfortable with them and waiting for the piglets to get stronger before we join them back with the rest of the herd. What a blessing it is to be back home, back on our chaotic farm, back in the never-ending to-do list, and back in the mess, because even though the house was clean when we got back to the farm, thank you, Vespina, for putting all that time and energy into cleaning our home. That was a really wonderful surprise. But our messy, chaotic selves completely demolished all of that within like 5 minutes. During the absence, the weeds kind of grew up tall and free, and the cows need to be rotated to a new pasture, and we have to put in a new field for the pigs, and it's time to butcher and it's time to plant, and we just kind of jumped right into the spring to-do list with both feet and without much of a chance to catch our breath, but in the best way possible. It's great to be back to work, planning out the weekends, and just putting the shoulder down for the grind, I guess. I loved the vacation. I know my girls did. They're still gushing about it. It was super exciting for them, but it's always great to be back home and back on the homestead. Thank you again for taking the time to listen to our podcast. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to email us. Our contact info is on our website at silvergoosefamilyfarm.com. You can also keep in touch and see all of our farm activities through our Instagram handle, same name, Silver Goose Family Farm. And yeah, thank you so much. I hope we get to share another farm story with you soon. Bye.